Okay, this is another force of attraction in between the molecules. This is number 4, which is called ion-induced dipole force of attraction. So, what type of force of attraction are called ion-induced dipole force of attraction? Actually, this type of force exists in between and an ion and a non-polar molecule For example, this is one ion Cl minus, which is called chloride ion, and this is one molecule, iodine molecule I2. You know, in iodine molecule, iodine contain one covalent bond, iodine molecule. Since both the atoms are same, I mean their electronegativity is same, that is why both the iodine will attract the bonded electrons equally, and that is why they cannot form any kind of delta plus and delta minus, and that is why this type of molecules are called non-polar molecule. Now, when this anion come towards this non-polar molecule, then also some force of attraction exists between them. What type of force? As you know, since it is negative ion, negative always attract the positive and negative repel the negative. This iodine molecule contain number of electrons. So as you know, electrons are negative, so that is why when this anion comes towards this iodine molecule, then all the electrons of this iodine molecule goes towards that side. Why? Because negative always have repulsion, and due to this repulsion, the electrons of iodine molecule goes towards opposite side, I mean that side, and that is why inside this iodine electron density going on increasing. Ultimately it becomes delta minus, and inside this iodine electron density going on decreasing, and it becomes delta plus. See, initially the molecule is non-polar, but under the influence of this ion, the molecule becomes polar one. So when this iodine become positively charged, then some force of attraction takes place between this positive end and this negative end, and this type of force is called ion-induced dipole force of attraction. I mean, this type of force exists between an ion and a non-polar molecule. I mean, under the influence of some ion, a non-polar molecule may be turned to a polar molecule, and this is called the induced dipole. I mean, initially it was non-polar, but under the influence of this ion, it becomes polar, and that's why this type of force is called ion-induced dipole force. Similarly, if you take positive ion, suppose you consider sodium ion, when sodium ion comes towards iodine molecule, I2 molecule, then what happens? This is positive now. Positive always attract the electrons, so that is why all the electrons of iodine molecule comes towards this side, and that is why it becomes delta minus. I mean, inside this iodine electron density increases, and this become positive. I mean, under the influence of this ion, the molecule turns to polar, and then this positive attract this negative, and this type of force is called ion-induced dipole force of attraction. So this was number 4. Number 5, another force of attraction, which is called dipole-induced dipole force of attraction. Dipole-induced dipole force of attraction. Actually, this type of force exists in between. Dipole means polar molecule, in between polar molecule, and induced dipole means non-polar molecule, polar molecule and non-polar molecule. So how this type of force exists? See, this is one molecule HCl, As you know, this is polar molecule. Due to more electronegativity of chlorine, it can form delta plus and delta minus. And this is iodine molecule I2, which is said to be non-polar one because both the atoms are same. There is no electronegativity difference between the atoms. So this is one polar molecule, this is one non-polar molecule. When this polar molecule comes towards this non-polar molecule, then what happens? This side negative, na? Negative repel the electrons of this iodine molecule, and due to this repulsion, all the electrons of iodine molecule goes towards that side, and that is why inside this iodine electron density increases, it become delta minus, and this iodine become delta plus. I mean, under the influence of this polar molecule, the non-polar goes to polar one, and then some force of attraction takes place between this positive end and this negative end, and this type of force is called dipole-induced dipole force of attraction. So from the naming you can write the definition. Dipole means you have to take a polar molecule, induced dipole means you have to consider one non-polar molecule. I mean, this type of force exists between a polar molecule and a non-polar molecule. And the last one, number 6, which is called London force. London force, or it is also called dispersion force. London force or dispersion force. This type of force exists. This type of force exists between two non-polar molecules. Between two non-polar molecules. Suppose this is one neon atom and this is another neon atom. As you know, neon is noble gas. Neon is atom, but the noble gases are, although they exist as atom, these noble gases are considered as molecule. That's why I have considered as molecule. There are two molecules of neon gases. As you know, this neon contain a nucleus and the electrons are present. Similarly, this neon also contain the nucleus and the electrons are present. So when this neon atom comes towards this neon atom, I mean when they come closer to each other, the nucleus of this neon attract the electrons of this neon. Similarly, the nucleus of this neon attract the electrons of this neon. Although it is a non-polar molecule, but they have some force of attraction between the nucleus and the electrons of the other atom, and this type of force is called London force or dispersion force. Similarly, when you take two non-polar molecules, so like if you consider two iodine molecules, both are non-polar, but although they are non-polar, although they have no positive negative charge, but they have also some force of attraction in between them, and that type of force is called London force or dispersion force. And this type of force exists in between two non-polar molecules. If someone asks you what type of force exists in between the noble gases, then you can write London force or dispersion force. What type of force exists between two non-polar molecules, then also you can say that is London force or dispersion force. So these are the intermolecular force of attraction. I mean the force of attraction takes place between the molecules. So dipole-dipole force of attraction, then hydrogen bonding force of attraction, iron-induced dipole force of attraction, dipole-induced dipole force of attraction, London force or dispersion force. These are togetherly, all these forces are togetherly known as van der Waals force of attraction. They are togetherly known as van der Waals force of attraction. Van der Waals is the name of scientist. Van der Waals force of attraction. So in exam, you will get some molecules and the question will ask what type of force exists in between the molecules, in between the following molecules. Then you have to write the name of the force of attraction. If the question asks what type of force exists between H2S molecules, between H2S molecules, if the question asks like this, see this is H2S molecule, you know it has band shape like water, and this is another H2S molecule. Sulfur is more electronegative than hydrogen, so it become delta plus, delta minus, hydrogen become delta plus. Similarly here also delta plus delta minus you will get, I mean both the molecules are polar. Between polar and polar molecule, what type of force exists? So this is nothing, this is dipole force of attraction. Similarly, the question asks what type of force exists between chlorine molecule and carbon tetrachloride molecule. If the question asks like this, then what you have to write? As you know, chlorine molecule, they contain a covalent bond. Since both are similar atom, I mean this is one example of non-polar molecule. Carbon tetrachloride, it has tetrahedral shape, you know. You should know the shape, then you can find out the polarity. Already you have got the dipole moment concept. It is tetrahedral shape like this. This is called the tetrahedral shape like methane. As you know, chlorine is more electronegative than carbon, so bonds are polar. But as you know, this chlorine attract the electron towards itself, this chlorine attract electron towards this side, this chlorine attract electron towards this side. And in tetrahedral shape, the bond angle all the bond angle will be 109.5 degree. I mean, equally the chlorine will attract the shared pair of electron in equal angle, and that is why the net force, the net resultant force will be 0. I mean dipole moment of the molecule is 0. Ultimately the molecule will be non-polar. Already you have got it. See, this is one non-polar molecule. This is also one example of non-polar molecule. I mean, as you know, between non-polar and non-polar molecule, what force exists? Which is called London force or dispersion force. Ultimately, the force of attraction between chlorine and carbon tetrachloride molecule is London force of attraction. So this type of question may ask in your exam, what type of force exists in between the following molecules. Then first thing you have to observe whether the molecule is polar or non-polar. If both are polar, then you write dipole. If both are non-polar, then you write your dispersion force or London force. If one is ion, another is non-polar, ion induced you can write. If one is dipole, another is non-polar. I mean, if one is polar, another is non-polar, then you can write dipole-induced dipole. And those molecules which can form hydrogen bonding, as you know, oxygen, nitrogen and fluorine can form hydrogen bonding. So those molecules which contain oxygen, nitrogen and fluorine, they can form this type of hydrogen bonding. Then you have to write the force of attraction will be hydrogen bonding force. So these are the intermolecular force of attraction in between the molecules. Thank you.